Okay, this is going to be a little overview of Data 610. This is your first course in the MSDA program, and it's important to get off to a good start. So it's very useful to go through and have a little overview such as this, I think, to provide some context. Okay, here's the agenda. I like to have an agenda. A little bit about an introduction, outline of the seminar, and then we'll talk about some details. We like to get all these logistic things done, and then a little bit about the philosophy of the course, which I think is important. So, introductions. Well, I'm Steve Canode. I helped put this course together. I'm one of the originators of the whole MSDA program, and we've grown nicely from a starting point of about 14 in 2014 to close to 400 today. My bio, again, and all your professors can provide their bios, but I have an undergraduate in mathematics from Duke University. I have a master's in business, and I have a doctorate in ops research management. So I'm very familiar with the world of quantitative things and the world of business things. And I think the marriage of decision making appropriate to business decisions and analytics is really key. It was kind of one of the key principles upon which we put together our MSDA program. So there's a brief bio on me. You can get more if you're interested. I would suggest you keep your bio up to date. Sometimes we can look and see from the bios some things we could emphasize more and perhaps pique your interest a little bit. You also want to make sure that your email address that you have in Leo is current. Professors often correspond with their students via email, so you need to make sure that that email address is the one you're using for this program. And then if you have some specific interests you'd like to see covered a little more fully, perhaps, put those in there. It sometimes is possible to accommodate that. Okay, back to the course. As I said earlier, our focus in putting this together is try to complement decision making with analytics. It doesn't do much good to have a really good analytic project if it doesn't impact somehow the decisions or the processes that are used in your organization. So we have focused now on three major themes, and this really comes from the work of Tom Davenport. Tom's got a great book. He's one of the gurus in the world of analytics, but his books are so informed and insightful that we rely on those books a lot. And one of his books, Keeping Up with the Quants, he outlined what we think is the ideal three-pronged approach. Frame a decision, analyze a decision, and then explain and implement a decision. And that's what is in his book, Keeping Up with the Quants. He makes a very good point in that book that if you don't frame the right decision, you're likely to set off on the wrong path, and you're likely to then solve a problem that was the wrong problem. So it's very important to frame the problem. By framing, we mean outline exactly what it is you're trying to decide. What's the thing you're trying to use the analysis for? And then what are some of the resources you're going to need? What are some of the perhaps key performance indicators you're going to use? Who's going to be involved? What kind of analytics are you going to use? Is it descriptive? Is it predictive? Is it prescriptive? And what specific techniques are you going to use? Regression, some kind of visualization thing. What software are you going to use? Where are you going to get the subjective things that go into your data? Sometimes we rely on expertise. Sometimes we rely on regulations. Sometimes we rely on procedures. Where are you going to get your data? So all that has to go into the framing of the problem before you set off on the adventure to apply the analytics. Now, the second step is, okay, once you've done that and gotten buy-in on that, then you go and look at how you're going to actually analyze the decision. Is it something where I need to do a lot of visualization of the data? Is it something where I need to discover things among the data points? Is it something where I need to build a predictive model? What does the data show? And then how do I put that together? And then finally, how do I make use of the data, the analysis I've done? What does it look like? Can I explain it? Some models are easier to explain than others. Does it make sense? And then what is it going to be the bottom line impact? So we focus on these three pieces throughout the MSDA program. Well, we try to get you started on all three pieces right off the bat in the Data 610 program. Now, remind you that this is what we call a competency-based course. Our whole program, in fact, the MSDA, is a competency-based program. That means you're graded on what you can do, not what you know. Now, of course, you have to know things before you can do things. But I think this competency-based approach will serve you well. It means that we have fewer assignments in number because if you're going to evidence competency, you have to have time to absorb concepts You have to have time to learn software. You have to have time to practice, or play time as we call it. And then you have to put together a comprehensive competency-based assignment. Now, there are the weeks in between the deliverables, the competency-based assignment deliverables, there are activities. If you keep up with those activities will keep you on track. The number one reason why anyone has difficulty with the course, I think, is the lack of the time to put in. You've got to put in that 15 to 20 hours per week and not skip weeks. You can't catch up, and stay on pace, and this is the approach. By the way, this competency-based approach, which is, again, used throughout the MSDA program, provides you with a very good opportunity to build a portfolio of things you've done while you're in the MSDA program. And that should serve you well when you go for a job interview or promotion. Somebody says, well, I know you have this degree, well, what can you do? Well, you can pull out that portfolio and say, look at the various things I have done. And so as you go through the program, you can continue to build this portfolio of accomplishments, of competencies, and have evidence of that, which I think would serve you well for employers. We have several sections running at the same time. Dr. Hang is teaching one, Dr. Hiboyan is teaching one, and Dr. Salib is teaching one. They're all using the same material, same assignments, etc., but they will be your professors, and so you need to make sure you have the appropriate contact information for whichever professor is appropriate for you. Now let me talk a little bit about software. We do get you into software. It'd be hard to do anything in analytics without some sort of software. And in the Data 610 program, we have two excellent software programs that we use. The first one is called Decisions First. I would be very surprised if any of you had heard of this program because it's small, it's unique. But what it does is, and does well, is allow you to use that software to fully frame the decision to be made. Remember that first step we said was framing, outlining the decision. Well, guess what? Decisions First does that better than any other program I've seen. It's cloud-based. You'll be accessing it from the vendor site. Your password and access will be provided to you by your course, either the TA or the professor. Once you have that, you'll be able to get in and start learning from the tutorials, etc. We'll be having a walkthrough of that software, recorded, of course, if anyone can't make it to the live presentation, very soon, perhaps, in fact, in this week. The second program we use is something you may have heard of. It's called Watson Analytics. It's from IBM. Watson Analytics is a program they introduced about 2 years ago. It too is cloud-based, and again, you'll be signing in and again accessing it from the vendor site. But it allows end users to conduct a certain level of analytics with minimal assistance. In other words, it gets you started. It does the usual things. It lets you do data refinement, data exploration. It lets you build some cursory predictive models. It lets you build excellent dashboards and presentation storybooks, and you'll get into all of that later. So we use Watson Analytics, again, from IBM, in the latter two-thirds of the course. So we'll be using it for several assignments, assignments 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it's a great program once you get used to it. We'll also provide a detailed walkthrough, actually a couple of walkthroughs of that software at the appropriate time. You won't begin using that until week 4. So you don't need to worry too much about that now. By the way, the name Watson, you may have heard of Watson without the analytics on the end. Watson is the IBM premier program. It's the one that won Jeopardy. It's used in hospitals, healthcare, financial institutions. It is widespread. Watson Analytics is not the full set of Watson. However, it does borrow the natural language processing piece, and you're going to see how valuable that is when you get into Watson Analytics. Basically, what that does is when you give it a data set, automatically the Watson Analytics NLP piece will generate some key questions that you should be looking at from the data set. That's a pretty good way to get started. Here's the detail on the assignments. As I said, there are several. 6 if you want to count discussion contributions, but 5 deliverables and then the discussions. You can see when they occur, weeks 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12. As I said, they're spaced out because you need some time in between to be adding on to your understanding of the software involved, the concepts, etc. So your first assignment is due at the end of week 3, and that will be using Decisions First. The remaining assignments will be using Watson Analytics. We do have one team assignment, as you can see. It's the final one, due week 12. You can refer to your syllabus to see the weightings on the assignments for grading purposes. And then there's a small piece of the grade weight assigned to discussion contributions. And that's based on how you contribute to that throughout the semester. Let me say a few more words about the discussion items. They're available for each week of the course, and you should try to contribute each week of the course. That is the expectation. The discussion items are designed so that we have some interactivity. We have some ongoing discussion among and between students. You don't just want to say, good job, Mary, nice work, Tom, or I agree, Tom. You want to add some insights, observations, content. It's a chance for you to talk about what's going on in your organization relative to the world of analytics. As you will see in the discussion questions, most of them are oriented towards the analytics piece of the program. And so here's our chance to exchange ideas. Here's what we're doing in our organization. Here's what we've had good luck with. Here's where we're not doing well. Here's where we could use some help. Here's some success stories we've had. Here's some things we've tried. Here's some insights we've gleaned. All of those things will help contribute to a higher grade on the piece of the course related to discussions. So please try to contribute frequently and substantially. There are a couple of ungraded assignments, you could call them, but certainly requirements. First, there's the Academic Integrity Pledge. Each course you take at UMUC, you have to agree to the Academic Integrity Pledge. It basically says that you're going to do all of your work yourself without other help. What you should do is go look and find that Academic Integrity Pledge, copy and paste it into a Word document, and then deposit that in the appropriate assignments area for the Academic Integrity Pledge. Please do that as soon as you can, but no later than week 1. You will not receive any grades on any assignments until you've done that. So that is an ungraded assignment, but it only takes a few seconds. The second ungraded assignment or requirement is Big Data University Watson Analytics course. Big Data University, if you haven't heard of it, is another IBM entity. They started a couple of years ago. And once you go to Big Data University and set up your free account, they have many, many, many excellent short courses in there that are free. Some of them last just a few hours. Some of them take a little bit longer. One of those courses is Watson Analytics Fundamentals 101. That course walks you through all of the Watson program in about 3 to 4 hours. So it will be one of your sort of assignments, if you will, to go through that, complete the course, take the little test at the end of each chapter of the course, and get your completion certificate, and then deposit that in the appropriate assignments area. That will evidence to us that you're aware of all of the neat things in Watson Analytics, and you can do some of them. So rather than invent our own course to show you Watson Analytics, we're taking advantage of one that was built by IBM and is excellent. Very, very well paced. It won't take you long. There's always other activities going on in the off weeks that you should take advantage of. Some of them are self-assessments. There's an assessment, for example, of how well your organization is doing analytically. There's an assessment of your decision-making style, etc. You really should take those just for your own edification, if you will, but they're excellent. There are required readings each week. We try to limit those. Again, the intent is that 15 to 20 hours should be the entire effort for each week, including doing the assigned readings, watching any assigned videos, working on or submitting any assignments. There are also many other web-based articles and links that can be added that are not necessarily required, but will be further expanding your knowledge of the subject. Finally, I would mention check the announcements section often. Daily would be ideal because updates do occur. Links go bad, better articles come out. So the syllabus is put together several weeks to months before the course, but the weekly lesson guides that you'll see have contained lectures, usually a video presentation, a lecture recorded within them. And so you want to use those lesson guides each week, and then you want to also watch the announcement section to see if there's any updates. A word about grading. Obviously, the grading is based on the course assignments. The grading policy is that if you do the work on time, on task, that means you covered all of the tasks adequately, you submitted it on time, you don't have typos, misspelled words, you have proper referencing, etc., you will get a grade that's a solid B, somewhere between 80 and 85. This is the graduate school policy. Higher grades are reserved for better work. So if you meet the minimum requirements, you're going to get a grade somewhere between 80 and 85, and of course you get feedback and a rubric from your professor. But suppose you say, I want to increase my grade. Well, there are several ways to do that. The main ways, of course, is to add greater depth, greater insights, greater evidence of critical thinking to your assignment. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, it depends. Each assignment's a little bit differently. Sometimes to add critical thinking, you provide a broader perspective. Sometimes you go and do extra. For example, if you're asked to build one model, maybe you build 5 and compare them. That's one way to show additional effort and show insights. If you're asked to build a presentation, you build 2 and you compare and contrast. Sometimes it's not so easy to decide exactly what evidence is critical thinking, but your professors will know because they all are really experienced. Providing examples, providing both sides of the argument, and so forth. All of those are ways to evidence critical thinking. So if you want to increase your chances of a higher grade, you need to add substantial critical thinking, meaning insights, additional information, additional effort to your assignments. The objective with grading, of course, is always to be as fair and objective as possible. We have detailed rubrics. You'll have some extra guidance for each assignment that'll show up in the assignments area. But remember, if you get a B on every assignment, that is the norm. That is good work. B's on every assignment will get you a B in the course. B's on every course will get you a master's degree in data analytics. If you have complaints, we call it pushback, or additional things you'd like information on, of course, that's invited at any time. Get in touch with your professor about those. So read the announcements section often. It used to be called news. It's now called announcements. Every day would be ideal because that's where your professor will post his or her updates, changes to assigned readings, new links, etc., if anything happens. Post questions. There's several areas for posting questions. One is called Let Me Have Any Questions, and that's an excellent place to post a question if you think the answer would benefit the entire class. If this is a question that you think has general applicability, that's the best place to put it because everyone can access the Let Me Have Any Questions discussion area. If it's a question that is only suitable for you or perhaps your team when we get to the team assignment, then it might be better to send an email to the faculty. And of course, if you have an emergency, you can always make a phone call. Faculty attempt to answer all questions within 24 hours. They attempt to grade all assignments within 1 week. Office hours. So you have the weekly lesson guidance that comes out each week. That is a complete document. It'll become available to you usually by Sunday of the beginning of the week. So beginning of week 1 was, that lesson 1 should be available. What's in the lesson? Well, if you look, you'll see there's an overview briefly about what the lesson's about. There's a recorded lecture material most weeks. There's a mention of software walkthroughs, if that's going to be that week. There's something about the readings. And, of course, if we run into any kind of problems, we can always hold additional online office hours. What you need to do is open that weekly lesson guidance as soon as you can at the start of the week. A lot of people like to say, well, I'll wait till the weekend and look at that's when I have a lot of time. But the best thing to do would be to open that lesson guidance immediately as the week starts and see what is going to be required for that week so you can allocate your time appropriately. And, of course, ask questions if you're confused about anything. Let's talk about weeks 1 and 2 to give you a heads up. Week 1, of course, the first thing you want to do is open that lesson guidance, take a look at the required readings, watch the video, etc. You're also going to get your information about accessing Decisions First sometime during that week 1. You log in your password, and as I said, there'll be a walkthrough recorded of how to use Decisions First that you can refer to. There are also many other tutorials that the Decisions First folks have put together. Very detailed, very well done. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to learn the software. Be sure to do the required readings. There's one reading in there that's kind of my favorite. It's about evidence-based decision making and the challenges of converting your organization to evidence-based decision making. You're going to learn the analytics in this program. You're going to find that analytics can be very useful. You're also going to find that there are cultural and other kinds of hurdles in your organization as you try to introduce a less intuitive, more evidence-based approach. Some organizations adapt to that quite readily and quickly. Other organizations fight it tooth and nail. Remember that most of the folks running organizations today, people in their 50s and 60s, did not grow up with the availability of processing power, access, internet, and the ability to do analytics. The techniques may have been around, but people really couldn't do anything about it. Now we can. The software is much easier to use. The software is, in essence, much cheaper to use and free for this program. The understanding of the software is where we need to do some improvement. You have to be able to explain what you've done and why it's appropriate. But please do those required readings. Watch the video. And remember, the video this first week will be focused on decision biases. It's an important way to start. When you start trying to change the culture and focus more on an evidence-based decision approach, the first thing you have to recognize is that we all have built-in decision biases. The evidence is overwhelming that these decision biases exist. They will continue to exist. And yes, we can mitigate them. We can ameliorate them. We can even sometimes overcome them. But they are there. And so analytics needs to start by understanding that many organizations would still prefer to make decisions intuitively, ad hoc, off the cuff, with gut feel, whatever you want to call it. And we're finding that those kinds of organizations are failing to succeed as opposed to organizations that are using a more evidence-based approach. So the first thing is to start and understand what those biases are, and then we move on from there in attempting to overcome them with the analytical approach. So all of that's in week 1. In week 2, you will spend the bulk of your time using and becoming familiar with Decisions First software. Remember, you have an assignment due at the end of week 3. So week 2, the main focus of week 2 will be spending a lot of time practicing with Decisions First, looking at the Decisions First tutorials, trying it, perhaps even building your first temporary or draft project, etc. So that's your chance to do that. That is the end of my presentation. I hope this has been helpful to you, and you should do well going forward.